There's two requirements. First, a narrative requirement. Discuss the objectives of setting a transfer price and how suboptimal transfer pricing can distort the performance assessment of the divisional managers. Illustrate your answers with examples from JCO. Sometimes our opening part of section C is a more general question. This one's asking for examples. One approach could be to read through everything and then answer this question. The other approach is we could come up with our headings that we think we're likely to talk about, because there's some pretty standard things around transfer pricing, and then as we read through this we can pick up examples that feed into that, and that's 6 marks. And then for 14, prepare a statement showing the profit of both divisions and J, the company as a whole, and the residual income for the divisions under existing and new policies. Lots of ands there, make sure we cover all elements. Where appropriate, your sales and cost figures should be split into external and internal. Comment on the results. It's unusual to have the requirement for a comment within a spreadsheet, but this is a mock. I think probably in the exam this would be sitting in a word processing element. We'll do it in the spreadsheet, but generally if you find you're writing a lot in the spreadsheet, you've probably misunderstood something. So if you're a calculation person, you'd probably start with this one. If you prefer narrative, you'd probably start with this one. So here's what I would generally call my essay plan. It's just headings really. I think I would never go much beyond that. These top 4 things are all linked to ideal transfer price system. One is to achieve goal congruence. That's where everyone is pushing in the same direction, so the divisions are not pushing against each other, and the decisions they make are in agreement with the goals of the overall organisation. Utilisation of resources. What we don't want is one division sitting idle with capacity to make more products and another division that is buying that same product from a third party. Autonomy is about the managers being able to make choices, to make the right decisions, but to be trusted to do that, and that leads into their motivation. And performance measurement, if we have a good transfer price system, then we're able to measure the performance of those managers. And then the 5th heading is the issues with suboptimal. So what I like to do when I set out my section C question is make sure I pick up on all elements of what I'm asked, because I'm much more likely to do a response to each aspect. The only thing I haven't got a heading for is illustrations, but that will come through as I go through here. I've just made my last one a little bit more specific, so it's issues with suboptimal and performance assessment, because I don't want to just list issues if they then don't relate to performance assessment. Let's take a look at what we're given. JCO produces a unique type of industrial paint and a special chemical called KQ, and it uses in its paint and sells to other customers. The company comprises 2 divisions, P and C. Division C manufactures the chemical KQ for Division P and external customers. So they've got 2 markets, some is sold internally to P and some is sold externally. Division P combines the KQ chemical it buys from Division C with other materials and sells the finished paint product to external customers only. Some get confused by this, and it's worth making sure you understand exactly what's going on. So P is making the paint and selling to external customers. One of the chemicals that goes into the paint is this chemical KQ, which it buys from C, and C is another division, but C also has its own external market. We've got the following information. So Division C, we've got selling prices, internal and external, cost per litre, materials and labour, fixed overheads. We've got the assets, and we'll need on the next question for the RI calculation. Maximum annual production is 2 million litres. The maximum annual external demand is 1.6 million and internal is 1.2. So they total 2.8, which means there's an opportunity cost here. If Division C sells internally 1.2 million litres, it's only got capacity to sell 800,000 litres externally, which is only half of what the demand is. And it charges more externally. So if it's forced to sell internally, we're going to have a grumpy manager who's not happy with that. Now Division P, They sell for $13.50. Obviously the input from Division C is the same, the $4.60, other materials externally. They've got fixed overheads, assets, and their supply matches demand. The current transfer policy issued by head office requires Division P to buy all its KQ from Division C, which, as I just said, means Division C cannot meet external demand. Division P manager has found a supplier for an equivalent chemical to KQ that it can purchase for $4.40 a litre. So it's buying $4.60 internally, it can buy externally for $4.40. And so Division P manager would like to switch. Division C manager is unhappy that she needs to supply Division P at a lower price before meeting the demand of external customers. Head office has now agreed to allow both divisions more autonomy in choosing suppliers and setting prices, as long as the group's profits are maximised. A new transfer price of $4.35 was proposed, and the managers of both divisions accepted it, and they're assessed on residual income, and their cost of capital is 10%. Let's take a look at what we'd write in this question in part A. So this is my answer. I changed it slightly. I changed my headings slightly. I had these three headings and then a performance measurement one, but then I realised that overlapped this one too much, so I merged that into one final one. And then I thought what I would do is take profit maximisation out and use that to introduce these three. So I've got two big headings and then some subheadings. So this is the approach I've gone for. And this first bit, this introductory bit, is often, I think, misunderstood, and I think it's important that the examiner realises that I understand how the interaction between divisional revenue and costs with a transfer price cancel out on consolidation. So I've written, although the chosen transfer price will not affect group profits, as it will show as a credit in one division and an equal debit in the other, so nets to zero on consolidation, the policy should encourage behaviours and outcomes such as goal congruence, resource utilisation and autonomy. It's the impact of these which can help or harm group profit. So that felt like a nice introduction, which then led into these. Goal congruence. A transfer price should be in the best interest of JCO, i.e. to maximise profits. If the transfer price is also in the best interest of divisions, this is goal congruence. Now I couldn't come up with an example from here that led into that without just repeating one that I've used further down. I did toy with the idea of just making up an example that was relevant, but then I was looking at my marks and I felt this was a mark, this was a mark, these two are marks, this was a mark. So I thought I was probably close enough. I think I probably have got 6, maybe only 5, but I was also running out of time. If I'd had another minute or two, then I'd probably try and put another sentence in there just to guarantee I get that mark. Utilisation of resources. If a transfer price means a manager purchases from the external market, leaving internal unused capacity, this is suboptimal. And then my example, if P purchased 1.2 million litres externally, S would have 20% unused capacity. Little side calculation. The transfer price should ensure this doesn't happen. So I think this is a really good example of, they currently have annual production maximum of 2, 1.2 million are going to P, and 800 external. If P purchased these externally, they'd make 1.6, leaving 400. A little simple side calculation like that shows good application skills. Autonomy is where managers are given freedom to make decisions without head office intervention. However, this can mean that both goal congruence and resource utilisation are not achieved, so a transfer price policy should enhance autonomy. And my example, the Division C manager is unhappy at the moment due to lack of autonomy, as they cannot serve the external market, which is demotivating and likely to adversely affect performance. Often I see people write it's demotivating, but they don't take it further. What is the problem with demotivated staff? They could leave, or like I've said here, it could affect performance adversely. I think it's better to finish it off, just take it right to its end point of the impact on the organisation. And then the second part of the question up here was how suboptimal transfer price can distort performance assessment. A high transfer price will benefit the selling division at the expense of the buying division. This will lead to unfair performance measurement, The buying division could lose out on a deserved bonus whilst the selling division is given an undeserved bonus. What's the impact? This is demotivating to both, as bonuses should be achievable but also challenging and also awarded based on controllable factors. And then I've taken it a bit further. This issue is further compounded if the buying division can purchase the same product externally at a lower price, as is the case with Division P. And I've mentioned the two figures, 440 and 460. This decreases contribution from Division P by 240,000 per annum. So that's that 20 difference multiplied by the 1.2 million. As RI is used to assess managers, the missed profit will be upsetting to the manager at Division P. So I think I'm there with 6 marks. Like I say, maybe it's 5. Maybe these side calculations help me out. But I was running out of time. I must keep discipline to time. I have about 10.5 minutes for 6 marks. And I'd much rather move on and get the low-hanging fruit elsewhere. So now I need to prepare my profit statement. I would certainly recommend using a 3-column approach, one for Division C, one for Division P, and one for the group. I've left a gap just in case I've got any notes or workings or anything like that I need to include. And that's fine, but the one risk is if I then use a sum function here that I only pick up the relevant columns and I don't pick up anything in my notes or my workings column. A profit statement shouldn't really have volumes of sales in it. So I would personally put that at the top, and then I'd have my profit statement starting a bit further down. And the reason I want to do that is I need to show this calculation or this table under existing and new policy. So I want to copy and paste it. When I paste it, I want to be able to change the sales volumes that are likely to occur as a result of the new policy. If I've built them into a formula, then that's a bit harder to do. So let's start with external and internal sales, and I'm going to do it in thousands. So Division C only can produce 2 million, and it's told it has to do 1.2 internally, which is 800 externally, maximum. And Division P does 1.2 million externally. Another reason to split external and internal, not so relevant here. Sometimes you have costs that are only incurred on external sales, like marketing and delivery. It's not the case here, but by having a separate external-internal column, then we can apply those costs only where relevant. When I copy and paste it and update this top bit, it sorts the rest out for me. I need to make sure my sales and cost figures are separated out in the same way internal and external. I should label my spreadsheet current policy. Division C sells externally for 490 and its external volumes are there. And it sells internally for 460. Division P sells externally for 1350. And then with J, I just take the total. One thing to think about is whether I should do a total of the internal sales. As long as I'm consistent, I think it's okay. So if I do the internal sales at the sales revenue line, I also have to pick up the costs further down. So at the profit line, they cancel out, as I said in the previous question, or I could just leave it out, and I think it's probably better to leave it out, and I'm just going to let a note that it contras. So let's look at our costs. We've got, for Division C, we've got some external vendors, direct labour, monthly fixed, and then for Division P, we've got this internal cost, external labour, monthly fixed. So we've got an extra row for this one. It's going to make sure I put those in at the outset so I don't miss one out or don't have to try and move my spreadsheet around. There's no costs internally for C. Externally, these are 120 each. And this time I need to make sure it's on the total volume, not just the parts sold externally. They need materials and labour on all of the chemicals, not just the ones that are sold externally. Likewise, labour is 180. For Division P, that should match that. And again, I'm going to put this contra comment next to it. Once you've set the template up, it's generally just quite systematic to go through and no other costs to deal with. So I can use my total column, but I'm going to have to just change the formula. So it's picking up D14 as well. And then I'm going to just paste those in there. So I pick up the full costs. So the contribution now is this revenue line minus the costs. Then finally, fixed costs. This is where reading the question is important. The production is annual, but the overheads are monthly. And I use copy and paste where I can. So that's my profit statement. I prefer to use bold for a couple of reasons. There is an underline function. I think it's a bit clunky on the platform, so I try not to use it. I use bold where I can. The other reason I like to use bold or a different color or something like that is when I'm picking up totals, it's a clear mark of where I need to go up to. And it's very easy in the heat of the exam just to pick up an extra line, get your calculation wrong. Obviously you lose a mark, it's not ideal. You'd get the follow through marks that as long as you've used the functionality, they'll pick up on why you've made that mistake. But using something like this just reduces the chance or the risk of that. So that's my profit statement. But then the other part of the question was the residual income. So I'm just moving those across to the side, just so they stand out a bit better. So I need to do the residual income for the divisions, not JCO. Divisional net assets, we've got 16.5 million here and 17.1 there. And the RI at 10% equals the profit minus 0.1 times the assets. So I prepared a statement showing the profit of both divisions, division C and division P, and JCO correct, and the residual income for the divisions under the existing policies. I've got my sales and cost figures split into external sales and interdivisional transfers. I haven't commented, I'll do that at the end. I want to copy and paste this, but before I do, I'm just going to highlight what I was asked for, which was a profit statement and residual income. So now I get the benefit of using the spreadsheet functionality and making sure I'd given some thought to that. Now I've got the new policy. What's the new policy? They can choose suppliers and the transfer price of $4.35 is proposed. Division C can sell externally or internally. Division P can buy externally or internally. And they're going to make a decision based on their capacity, the demand and the transfer price. So at $4.35, Division C could make $4.90 if it sells externally, or now $4.35 internally. So it is going to maximize its external sales, which then means only 400 can be internal. It's external, it's still getting $4.90, so that sorts itself out. Internal is now $4.35. The profit sorts itself out. No change here. External materials, it's still using the same materials, and obviously I picked up the 2000 anyway, so I don't need to change that. Labour hasn't changed, this hasn't changed, contribution hasn't changed, divisional net assets hasn't changed, so everything else stays the same. We just changed the volumes and the price here. What are Division P doing? Well, they're still selling 1.2 million externally. Their external sales revenue hasn't changed, but now they're buying internally, and this is the one I do need to change. So they're paying $4.35, but they're not buying 1,200 now. They're buying just the 400 internally. What I have done is not left a line for the ones they buy externally. So I'm just going to add that in at the top. They can buy externally for $4.40, and they're going to buy all 1,200 minus the ones they're getting internally. So I need to just be a bit careful now. So I made a bit of an error by not incorporating that earlier on, but it's easy to fix. I wouldn't try and add a line in by cutting and pasting. I've just do it across as I've done here. What I now need to make sure is my total here picks up that top line. So everything else sorts itself out. So a slight oversight there, easily done. That's one of the reasons I like leaving gaps, because I've got a little bit of a buffer zone I've given myself. So now we need to comment. It's not clear how many marks are available for comments. It's probably 2, possibly 3. I think it would be more than 1. What's important? Let's take a look. So by giving them autonomy and allowing them to purchase from outside, well, with P, what has happened? Profit was 3.5 3.74 million. That's gone up to 4.14. So J should be happy. This new policy's helped. What about the managers? The RI on which they're evaluated has gone from 110 or 270 to 250 and 350. So the performance of both managers has improved. So on the whole, this is a positive change. And I'm really just going to reflect back why it's a positive change. So I've just done a little work in there just to calculate the profit. They've increased profit by $400,000. Often people just write the 400, although we use the thousands here for the table. When you're doing the narrative, it's better to make it clear that it's 400,000. Okay, so I've got my comment down the bottom. So I've done a calculation and a percentage on the original. Written the new policy is a positive change. It has achieved better goal congruence. Jayco has increased profit by 400,000, which is 11%. Both managers are pleased as their RIs have increased, therefore increasing their bonuses. In addition, they now have more autonomy, which is motivating. So there we go. I think the key takeaways from this is when you've got a divisional performance question, I would always think the column approach I've done here is the way forward. Even if the question lays it out like this, one, because it's easier to see, but also this calculation, the Jayco calculation, is a simple addition then. There'll be marks for doing that, and it's much easier there than doing a third section just for Jayco. Make sure when you build your spreadsheet, you do it in such a way you can copy and paste. Don't make the mistake I made without leaving enough lines there. But if you do, if you take this approach where you leave a little bit of extra space, then you can always shuffle things around. I always recommend highlighting answers. I think it makes it a lot easier for the marker just to target in. If you've got all of these correct, they're just going to give marks here. They're probably not even going to look at what you've done. It's only if any of these are wrong, they'll start to drill down into what you've done. I've made sure I've answered all parts of the question and a little additional work. And I think that's always good if you've got a comment to make on some work and you've done, and you can do a little bit of analysis. That's normally scores a mark or half a mark just for that little side calculation. Well, that's the end of the mock. I hope you found these various video debriefs useful and helpful. I always aim to deliver more than just the answers and try and help with technique and approach and time management and efficiency. These are the sorts of things I'm hoping that will come out by looking at my approach. You will have seen I made some mistakes as I went through. I think I picked up on all of them. I will check before I publish the video and I'll put a comment on if I have made a mistake that I didn't pick up on. And each time I've tried to keep my answer and what I've done within the time that I would allocate for each of these questions. So if you're sitting in June on June the 4th, wish you all the best of luck. Performance management's a tough exam. All you can do between watching this video and sitting the exam is just keep focused, do as much study as you can. The more practice you can do, actual practice on the platform under exam conditions, and then review, debrief your answer, look at the model answers, that is invaluable. Makes a real difference to success, I think. So once again, good luck. Thanks very much.